Discover the incredible, life-changing journey of a grandma who overcame trauma to inspire 10,000 hearts. Grandma Ruth stood behind the counter of her beloved diner, a small yet vibrant beacon in a fading Midwestern town. The worn linoleum floor had seen laughter, tears, and countless slices of pie. At 75, she was a firecracker of spirit, though recently that fire was flickering. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the faint hint of burnt memories. The scent of her late husband's uniform still lingered every morning. He had been a Vietnam veteran, a hero in her eyes, lost too soon but remaining etched in the layers of her heart. As she wiped down the counter, her hands trembled, not only from age but from the weight of unspoken memories. Each swipe of the cloth reminded her of the lines in her husband's face, the warmth of his smile. Time had slipped by too quickly since he had passed, leaving her alone to fight against the shadows that sought to claim the diner her sanctuary. The townsfolk, once packed into booths, now left the diner's doors creaking in the wind like a sad farewell. Society labeled her a relic, but she refused to let them define her. Yet it was not just about keeping the diner alive. It was about keeping hope alive for the lonely souls that wandered in. If they could share secrets over coffee and homemade pie, maybe they could hold on to something precious. Ruth poured her heart into the diner, even as weeds crept through the cracks outside, a metaphor for her own lingering weeds of grief and stubborn pride. Then unexpectedly, Claire stepped back into Ruth's world. Her estranged daughter, a successful city dweller who had traded the comforts of small-town life for corporate ambition, returned with a heavy heart of her own. Their clashes were explosive, igniting unresolved grievances. Ruth felt the walls of her diner shrink with every rising tension. Both of them fighting for their beliefs. Family loyalty faced off against the pursuit of new dreams. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Ruth grappled with her fading sense of self, disaster struck. A kitchen fire erupted, flames dancing dangerously close to the heart of her diner. Townsfolk, once mere acquaintances, became a mighty army racing to save what had always been theirs. Hands that once hesitated grasped one another, rekindling the bonds that her diner had forged. But for Ruth, this fire symbolized more than a potential loss. It was a furious confrontation with her past and the fragile relationship with Claire. As the realities of love, sacrifice, and ambition collided, both women stood at the edge of defining their legacies. Could they bridge the chasm created by years of hurt? Surrounded by smoke, hope sparked amidst the ashes of their conflict. The clock ticked relentlessly, emotions ran high, working against them, leaving readers on the precipice of discovery. Could the fire save their strained bond, or would it consume their last chance at reconciliation? Ruth's heart pounded like thunder in her chest as she watched flames roar inside the kitchen, licking greedily at the faded yellow walls, turning her memories into smoke. The acrid smell flooded her senses, mixing with her already tangled emotions. Claire stood frozen by the door, eyes wide and shocked, as the chaotic scene unfolded, a reflection of their own shattered relationship. "Mom, we have to get everyone out," Claire shouted, her voice cutting through the panic. The urgency in her tone echoed louder than the alarm bells in Ruth's heart. At that moment, standing still felt like an option even less palatable than facing the fire. Ruth nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Right." But her legs felt like lead. It was as if the very diner, this place filled with whispered secrets and laughter, was pulling her in, unwilling to let her face the world beyond the flames. Claire charged ahead, a whirlwind of action, yelling for customers who had become her second family. "Everyone, out the back," she urged, her commands firm. It was a stark contrast to the harsh words exchanged between them just days ago. Now they were united by a common cause, saving lives, and maybe in that, their bond could also be rekindled. As Ruth stepped forward, the familiar faces of customers caught her eye. Some were regulars she had known since they were children. Old Mr. Hargrove, who always ordered blueberry pancakes. Millie, the young waitress in need of a little guidance. She couldn't bear the thought of them being trapped, swallowed by the fire that threatened to take away not just the diner, but the essence of her spirit. Get out. Now. Ruth called, her voice stronger now, fueled by fear and love. She began ushering people toward the back exit, memories flooding her mind as each person passed by her. Moments spent together, birthdays, anniversaries, milestones flashed like the growing flames, leaving behind warmth tinged with desperation. With the last tables cleared, she risked a glance back at Claire. Her daughter was guiding the final few patrons towards safety, but the heat was rising, and smoke was beginning to fill the front of the diner. It was a race against time, as every second felt like an eternity. Finally, Claire and Ruth locked eyes, a mix of desperation and understanding passing between them. There was no room for angry words now, just the pressing weight of survival. I'm right behind you. Let us go. Claire shouted to Ruth, beckoning her to join. Ruth took a deep breath, summoning her strength, but not before glancing at the place she had built from the ground up. Everything she had poured into the diner, every slice of pie served, every heart stitched together over coffee, it made her who she was. Together they begrudgingly stepped into the unknown, leaving the flames and their unresolved issues behind, for now. As they burst out into the cool night air, they were met by a wave of townsfolk who had gathered. Shocked faces concerned for their safety became a net of support, binding them tighter than the flames that had threatened to tear them apart. In that moment, amid sirens and swelling crowds, a thought started to bloom in Ruth's heart. Could this disaster be a catalyst for change? Could it spark a healing she never thought possible? But then a thought pierced her reverie. What would happen if they lost everything? And with that uncertainty loomed an even bigger question. Could the diner be rebuilt, or had they lost not only a physical place but a vital piece of their relationship as well? The fire raged, but amidst the chaos, could Ruth and Claire find their way back to each other before it consumed all hope? Ruth blinked against the harsh lights of the fire truck, the sirens ringing in her ears as townsfolk murmured around her like a protective cocoon. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling wholly exposed, not just by the flames but by the weight of everything she had built. And just like that, it felt like all the warmth she felt moments ago had been stripped away, leaving her cold and uncertain. Mom, you okay? Claire's voice slipped through the crowd, a familiar anchor amid the chaos. Ruth turned, seeing Claire standing there, clear-eyed amidst the smoke, worry etching lines across her youthful face. It was as if the fire had burned away their past quarrels, leaving raw and unfiltered love in the aftermath. I think so, Ruth stammered, shaking slightly as she pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace. The scent of charred wood lingered in the air, but the warmth of Claire's presence reminded her that they were both still standing, still together. Moments later, a voice broke through the clamor. Everyone all right? It was Officer Daniels, moving through the crowd, his look both stern and soft as he assessed the situation. Attention shifted towards him as he checked on each familiar face, relief washing over him as he recognized the two women standing with each other. We all got out, Claire said, her voice steady, innately taking charge. Ruth marveled at her daughter's courage. But the diner? Claire's voice trembled just slightly, revealing the crack beneath her armor. Ruth turned to the diner, now shrouded in smoke and glowing embers. It wasn't just a building. It was the heart of their community, a home away from home for so many. And yet, as she stood there, the flickers of orange and red reminded her of something else. Renewal. The idea planted in her heart earlier burgeoned with each crackle of the fire. Maybe it's a chance, Ruth said slowly, her gaze unwavering from the flames. A chance to start fresh. For us too. She didn't know where the words came from, but they felt right. Claire searched her face, searching for any hint of the maternal despair she feared. Instead, she saw something else, a glimmer of hope that maybe this wasn't just an ending. You really think so? She asked hesitantly. I don't know yet, Ruth admitted, a lump forming in her throat. But what if we could rebuild? Not just the diner but us? Silence enveloped them like a blanket, thick with possibilities. All around, people were beginning to connect with one another, sharing stories, piecing together fond memories of the diner, while sparks of inspiration ignited their communal spirit. I don't want to lose our home, Claire confessed, tears pooling in her eyes but shining with determination. But I don't want to keep losing each other either. Ruth nodded, taking Claire's trembling hands. We can make this mean something. Together. It was the first time in a long while she truly felt connected to her daughter as the firemen tackled the flames, the community resolved to bring the diner back from the ashes. Each smile, each hug shared not just sparked a fire of hope but stoked the flames of their fractured relationship. Ruth felt lighter, buoyed by the shared purpose forming around them. But just as hope began to fill her heart, a shadow flitted across her mind. Could they truly navigate this journey together? What if their past haunted them like the smoke that clung tightly to her clothes? "Mom, let us do this," Claire urged, pulling her toward the heart of their community. "Let us show everyone that love can rise from the ashes." But as Ruth breathed in the cool night air, the darkness of doubt lingered. Could she be brave enough to let the past go? As the sirens faded and hope threaded through her heart, she felt the tingling uncertainty of tomorrow, standing on the edge of vulnerability. Together they were taking the first step forward. But would they be able to face not just the flames of their past, but the fears of the future yet to come? Ruth took a deep breath, inhaling the sharp scent of smoke and faintly charred memories. The embers danced before her eyes like a flickering reminder of all they had lost. But amidst the chaos, she could sense a quiet determination rising up. "Mom, look." Claire pointed toward the crowd that had formed. People were converging. They were discussing their favorite meals from the diner, recalling laughter and stories shared within those walls. It felt like a fire of its own, and Ruth couldn't help but be swept along. Instead of fleeing from the pain, they were bonding over memories. Conversations often brushed aside by the hectic pace of life were reignited, bursting forth with questions and ideas. What if we held a fundraiser? Someone suggested. A community dinner to raise money for rebuilding. Ruth's heart swelled. It wasn't just about the diner anymore. It was about community spirit, resilience, and the shared affection they all held for a common ground. With Claire still by her side, Ruth felt an urge to join the discussions. Slowly, they angled their way toward the cluster of familiar faces, mingling with neighbors whose own eyes reflected their fears but also their hopes. Each person offered comfort, and with every conversation, the shadow of despair started to lift. "Mrs. Marcus, I can't believe you're here," one of the locals shouted with what sounded like relief. "Your pies have been the heart of that diner. We need them back." Laughter followed, light and genuine, and Ruth couldn't help but smile. She had poured her soul into that pie recipe, and to know it had become a cherished part of their community eased her heart just a bit as the clamor grew. Claire squeezed Ruth's hand. "See, we're not alone. They want us to rebuild. Together." Her voice carried an unwavering conviction that suddenly felt contagious. Ruth nodded, her pulse quickening at the thought of action. "Okay, everyone." Ruth stepped forward, feeling an unexpected spark of confidence. The murmurs quieted as she began to speak. "We might have lost the diner, but we haven't lost each other. We can do this. Let us turn our pain into purpose. Let us bring our diner back, and along with it, the community spirit that brought us all together." Cheers erupted, and Ruth felt the warmth of unity wrap around her. This was what she had longed for. A chance to mend. But just as the excitement began to swell, another familiar voice rang out from the back. "Hold on. Have we thought this through?" It was Martha, the town historian, standing with arms crossed and skepticism etched on her face. "Rebuilding won't be as easy as you think. What about the costs? The planning? The past?" Ruth's heart sank. The reminder of the past lingered, heavy and difficult. Would they be able to confront not only the uncertainty of rebuilding, but also the old faces within their community that represented their struggles? Time seemed to stretch as Martha's words hung in the air, balancing hope with reality. Claire glanced at her mom, a mix of determination and fear signaling between them. Ruth felt their momentum teetering on the edge. "We can figure it out," she said, finding strength in her voice again. "We just have to be willing to face it together." The crowd's energy began to ripple, and whispers sprouted anew. Someone mentioned forming committees. Others suggested sources for grants. The initial doubts faded a little as visions of what they could work towards began to weave among the townsfolk. But as Ruth looked around, her gaze locking with Martha's serious expression, a deeper unease rippled through her. What if they couldn't afford the expenses? What if the past decisions came back to haunt them? What if rebuilding the diner meant reopening wounds she wasn't ready to face? Just then, Officer Daniels stepped forward again, commanding attention with a respectful pace. "What's important is to take this one step at a time. We're all in this together. His voice held authority, warmth threading through his words as Ruth nodded. Absorbing it all, she felt an unfamiliar resolve. We'll find a way, she declared. Her heart beating stronger. For the diner. For us. For our families. The crowd erupted once more, but for Ruth, a new worry mingled with her renewed hope. She clung tightly to Claire's hand, ready for the uncertain path ahead, but knowing it wouldn't be as easy as she wished. What revelations awaited them as they ventured into this shared uncertainty? Would the journey lead to healing or deeper scars? As the crowd buzzed around her, Ruth couldn't shake the feeling that the real trial was only just beginning. Ruth felt the crowd's energy pulse like a heartbeat, echoing the determination that now rooted itself deep within her. As she looked out at the faces of her neighbors, she saw a tapestry of emotions. Hope intertwined with apprehension, laughter tinged with worry. Each pulse of excitement reminded her of the life they had built together over years of shared meals and stories at the diner. "Thank you, Officer Daniels," she said, feeling her throat tighten. "You're right. One step at a time." The crowd shifted, leaning in closer, eager for clarity in the dreams that had begun to take shape. "Let us form a committee right now," shouted a voice. "Some folks can handle fundraisers, others can scout for locations." Ideas ricocheted like fireworks, illuminating their path forward. Ruth caught Claire's eye and saw the fire of possibility shining there. "Sure. Let us do it," Claire exclaimed, her excitement infectious. "We can have a bake sale, and my friends and I can volunteer at the community dinner." Ruth's heart felt light. With each plan laid out, a sense of destiny unfolded. But Martha, still skeptical, raised her hand again. "We need to set realistic goals. We can't forget that we still have other responsibilities. How do we manage our daily lives in this huge task?" Ruth took a deep breath, recognizing Martha's concerns and feeling the collective weight of doubt pressing down again. "You're right, Martha. We have to balance this with our lives. Maybe we should start small. This doesn't have to be about rebuilding everything at once. Let us just focus on getting the diner back open. Piece by piece." Her voice steadied, rallying the doubts into focus. Claire squeezed her hand tighter, her small gesture grounding Ruth, reminding her why they were here. "Together we can tackle it," Claire said, her voice firm. "What's the first thing we need to do?" A woman in the front row spoke up. "We need a community meeting space. How about the park? It's big enough, and we can all gather there to share ideas." That felt right. Ruth imagined the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods wafting through the air as people came together under the open sky, laughter merging with the gentle rustling of leaves. "Yes, let us do that. We can host a community dinner in the park this Saturday. Everyone can bring a dish for a potluck. It'll start our momentum," Ruth added, her heart racing at the thought of uniting their purposes. The murmuring among the crowd grew louder. Hope was palpable. But just as excitement began to swell, a chill ran down Ruth's spine. A looming sense of the past lingered like mist in the air, a quiet reminder of what had been lost. She caught Martha's eye. It was unyielding. "Ruth, what about the diner's insurance? Will that cover the costs of rebuilding?" Martha's question cut through the jubilant energy, grounding it back to reality. "We need a plan beyond warm thoughts and pie recipes." Ruth's stomach twisted. Questions hung heavy in the air like dark clouds threatening rain. How could she begin to tackle the unknown? She was spent, battling doubts that clung to her like shadows. I don't know," she admitted, her fragile resolve momentarily wavering. Immediately, Claire's hand found her shoulder. "Mom, we can figure that out. You've always taught me to face my challenges." Right, Ruth breathed, steeling herself. "Okay, we'll look into it. We can contact the insurance company and find volunteers to help organize the gathering." As the crowd began discussing the details of the potluck, Ruth felt a stir of warmth through her heart. Could they really do this? Could the fears slip aside? She met Claire's gaze, seeing the unwavering determination there. Together, Ruth whispered. But as voices rose in excitement about food and plans, doubt whispered its haunting words just out of reach. How would they cope with the realities of rebuilding if those shadows turned darker along the way? And what new challenges awaited as they sought to mend not just a building, but the scars that ran deeper within their hearts? Would they stand united, or would the past pull them apart? Ruth woke early the next morning, the sun filtering through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the cluttered table. She brewed a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the silence. Her mind buzzed with last night's meeting, and the weight of her responsibilities pressed down like a heavy quilt. Claire, still sleepy-eyed, shuffled into the kitchen. "Morning, Mom. What's the plan for today?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Ruth took a moment, assessing the small voice of hope within her that fought against the worries. "We need to start reaching out. First, let us call the insurance company." "Right. I can help with that," Claire said, her enthusiasm bubbling over. Ruth smiled, but it faded as Martha's doubt replayed in her mind. The logistics felt enormous. Would the insurance even consider their claim valid? Ruth poured a cup for herself, its warmth grounding her as she recalled their loss, both the physical diner and the community intertwined with it. After breakfast, they began their mission. Ruth grabbed her phone while Claire drafted a list of volunteers from the meeting. Together they made calls, each ring echoing a mix of anticipation and dread. Their first call to the insurance agent felt as daunting as a tightrope walk. "Hello, Ms. Parker. This is Ruth Langston. We need to discuss our claim for the diner," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, revealing the tiny chink in her armor. As the conversation unfolded, the agent was surprisingly empathetic. "I understand how devastating this must be for you and your community. Let us start the process." Ruth felt a flicker of relief, but each step still came tinged with uncertainty, like a shadow lingering just beyond the light. After an hour, they turned their attention to organizing the potluck. Claire beamed as they filled out the details on a community board outside the park. "This is going to be great, Mom. Everyone is going to come together." Ruth nodded, her heart swelling at the thought, but Martha's voice still lingered at the back of her mind, haunting her progress. They needed food, decorations, and a plan to keep it all under control. "Maybe we can ask local businesses to donate?" Claire suggested. "Your regulars at the diner would want to help." "Yes." Just then, Ruth started abruptly, as a figure from her past approached. It was Harry, a former cook at the diner, someone she had lost touch with since the fire. "Ruth, I heard about the diner." His eyes were warm, but Ruth felt a pang of unease. "I want to help. I loved working there. What do you need?" Ruth hesitated. Could she really depend on others when her own heart was still fraying at the edges? She realized the question wasn't about what they needed. It was about what they could share. "Could you donate food? Or help with the setup?" she asked. "Absolutely. We can do a barbecue." "I'll bring what I can," he said, and she saw sincerity across his face. As he walked away, the uncertainty felt dimmer. The community had begun to rally, and Ruth's heart warmed as new layers of hope began to weave into the fabric of their plans. Later, as they headed to the park to finalize arrangements, Ruth noticed an elderly man eyeing the community board. His face lit up when he saw the potluck flyer. "Count me in. I'll bring my famous cornbread," he shouted with a smile that reminded her so much of old joyful days at the diner. Each yes was another knot tightening the bonds of their community. The whispers of doubt began to fade, if only for a moment. But just as she thought their plans might just hold together, a group of young adults arrived, rolling their eyes as they approached. "What? You think a potluck can really save the diner?" One of them scoffed. Ruth's heart sank, the shadows creeping closer again. What would it take to make them see? What if this all fell apart? "Let us show them what we can do," Claire whispered, and Ruth felt her daughter's fight pull her back to the light. Could they transform the cynics into believers? With every challenge they seemed to find another spark. But as they drew closer to the potluck, what unforeseen hurdles lay ahead that could threaten their fragile hope? The sun hung high, casting a golden light over the park as Ruth and Claire returned to set up for the potluck. Excitement buzzed around them, but doubt still shadowed Ruth's mind. Would all their hard work really make a difference? Could they truly rally their community after such loss? Claire darted ahead, pulling out her phone to gather last-minute confirmations. Ruth busied herself with setting out tables, her hands moving on autopilot. She glanced up, watching a family arrive, arms full of dishes. "Hey there," Claire called out cheerfully. "What did you bring?" A woman smiled bashfully. "My grandmother's recipe for potato salad. She used to make it for every family gathering." Each dish unwrapped was like a thread weaving the community back together. The scent of various foods wafted through the air, rich and inviting. As neighbors mingled, laughter rang out, mingling with quiet conversations about old memories. This was what the diner had always been, a breath of home. A small tension, however, lingered. The group of young adults who had scoffed earlier loitered nearby, exchanging snide remarks. Ruth's heartbeat quickened. What if they shrunk the joy that had begun to bloom? Claire, sensing her mother's hesitation, leaned in. We need to focus on the positive, Mom. Look at everyone coming together. Right, Ruth repeated, forcing a smile. But as she turned to the food being arranged, her heart ached. The shadows of doubt whispered in her mind. What if it wasn't enough to bring everyone back? What if the diner was just a memory now? Just then Harry arrived again, this time with a grill in tow. Hope you're ready for some serious barbecue, he said, a grin lighting his face. Harry, Ruth exclaimed, a wave of gratitude washing over her. You really came through. He shrugged modestly. I couldn't let you down. This diner meant something to all of us. His words struck a chord within her. Maybe this wasn't just about the food or the diner. It was about the history they shared, the ties that ran deeper than walls. As the potluck began, neighbors' connected stories flowed like the punch Claire had made, filled with laughter and nostalgia. Ruth noticed the young adults slowly edging closer, interest piqued. One of them, a girl with a bright smile, cautiously approached Claire. What's all this about? She asked, tilting her head toward the group. Claire seized the moment. It's about coming together, about being a community. We can rebuild the diner, but we have to start somewhere. The girl seemed to reconsider, nodding slowly. Okay, maybe I get it. Hope surged and the sunlight felt warmer. Maybe this evening could change everything. As the sun dipped lower, Ruth stood by the tables, filled with plates of love and laughter. She felt a presence beside her and turned to see the elderly man from earlier. Thank you for organizing this, he said, his voice soft yet steady. We need this. You need this. His sincerity caught her off guard, and her heart swelled with warmth. For the first time this week she felt a rush of confidence. Thank you for being here, Ruth replied. We really can't do it without all of you. Just then, a loud clap of thunder echoed overhead, breaking the moment. The clouds had darkened, rolling in fast, and Ruth's heart sank. Fear swept through the crowd as people gasped. Oh, this doesn't look good, Claire muttered, her eyes wide. The air turned electric with tension. Would the impending storm disperse the energy built throughout the evening? Ruth felt the grip of uncertainty tighten around her. Let us hurry and get everything under cover, she called, clenching her fists. Could they pull through this twist when hope was finally within reach? As the first drops of rain began to fall, Ruth met Claire's worried gaze, the muffled voice of doubt creeping back in. Would this storm wash away their efforts? They had come so far, with determination washing over her. Ruth took a deep breath. We'll handle this together, she said, the storm clouds still gathering above as the first claps of exuberant laughter mingled with distant thunder. But just as they began to move, a flash of lightning split the sky. What would happen next? Ruth's heart raced as she watched the first raindrops splatter against the ground. Panic began to ripple through the crowd. Faces once lit with joy now turned unsure, darting eyes searching for cover. The delicious aromas that had filled the air were momentarily replaced by the sharp scent of rain mixing with the food. Claire grabbed the tablecloths. Ruth shouted over the swelling wind. They had prepared for every detail of this potluck except for a sudden storm. As Ruth sprinted to the nearest table, she spotted Harry leading a group, rallying neighbors to save the grill. He lifted it effortlessly, showing the kind of strength that turned this gathering into a communal mission. All right, everyone. Let us keep moving. Harry's voice boomed through the park, the steady cadence cutting through the clamor. We can't let a little rain ruin this. Ruth felt her resolve stiffen. When he spoke, she could feel strength surging through the group, like a rope binding them together tighter, more determined. If they worked as one, maybe the storm wouldn't extinguish their hard-earned hope. As she helped Claire pull a tablecloth over the remaining salads, Ruth spotted the young girl from earlier, still standing nearby, unsure. Her bright smile had dulled, but her eyes were still filled with curiosity. Hey, Ruth called. We could use your help. Can you grab that cake from the side? The girl hesitated but nodded, moving toward the dessert table. Ruth felt a flicker of hope surge again. Maybe the storm wasn't just about the rain, but about what it could reveal, the way it could strengthen their connections. With the winds picking up, Ruth pushed aside her worries, focusing instead on the bustle around her. "We need a designated spot for the food," she yelled, trying to be heard above the increasing thunder. "Let us pull everything under that pavilion. It's the best cover." As they scrambled, each small act began to weave together a sense of unity. The elderly man returned, carrying over a big tub of soup, eyebrows furrowed with determination. "I've got this," he declared, earning applause from nearby neighbors. "See, we rise together," Claire said, pulling Ruth into a side hug. "We're all in this, Mom." Moments later, laughter erupted around them again as one neighbor slipped in the mud, landing squarely on their backside. The sound was bright. Lightning flashed, but nothing could dim the joy they shared even amidst the chaos. Just then, a sudden gust of wind sent the remaining tablecloths flapping like flags of resilience. Ruth spotted the young girl again, now laughing with a boy from the other group. Their tentative connection solidified as they joined efforts, gathering fallen items and sharing smiles. The atmosphere was electric, filled with camaraderie and determination. When the rain began pouring in earnest, Ruth saw Harry lead a conga line of laughter under the pavilion, everyone shoulder to shoulder. "Join us," he shouted, beckoning Claire and Ruth, pulling them into the fold. This storm, Ruth realized, wasn't flattening spirits but forging them anew. With arms locked together and spirits lifted high, they danced like a sea of joy amidst the downpour. But just as she felt alive in the moment, a blinding flash illuminated the sky, followed by a deafening crash of thunder that rattled her very bones. The laughter turned to gasps, and for the first time, fear sliced through the warmth of community closing in around her. "What do we do?" Claire shouted over the chaos, the line of mirth faltering for a fraction of a second. Ruth opened her mouth, but the question echoed in her heart. Could they stay united against whatever this storm demanded? As fear mingled with disbelief, she took a steadying breath. "Stay close," she finally shouted, her voice cutting through uncertainty. "We'll weather this storm together." Outside the pavilion, the rain poured harder, and she felt the community huddle together, strength radiating from every soul. But as lightning struck again, illuminating silhouettes against the raging sky, Ruth couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was just beginning. What if the storm revealed deeper truths, darker fears buried within them all? Would they rise from this stronger or shattered? As the rain lashed against the pavilion, Ruth's heart pounded in her chest. The laughter that had bound them together had been replaced by a tension that snapped at the edges of their camaraderie. She scanned the faces around her, wet hair sticking to foreheads, hands gripping each other tightly, eyes flickering from person to person, searching for assurance. "Let us stay focused," Harry bellowed from the center of the crowd, kicking up mud as he stepped forward. "Just like when we barbecued in the backyard, this is a challenge we can tackle together. Who has got some muscle for those tables?" Several hands shot up in response, and that single act ignited a spark. The elderly man with the soup and a few teenagers grouped together, moving as a well-oiled machine to stabilize the food stands at the pavilion's edges. A swell of hope surged within Ruth. If they could keep this loyal spirit alive, maybe they could escape the storm's clutches unscathed. "Claire, help me shift that table here," Ruth shouted, her words blending into the thunder that rolled overhead. She grabbed the edge of the table, her body slick with rain, heart racing. Claire joined in and they maneuvered it closer. Around them, the community began to work in concert. As the initial roar of the storm faded into the background, they found their rhythm. Laughter resumed, ignited by Harry's impromptu polka dance that had everyone giggling. For every loud crack of thunder, there was a cheerful burst of encouragement that echoed through the air. Ruth felt her worries dissipate, and for a moment, she imagined the storm as a distant memory that couldn't touch them here. But as the minutes passed, the storm shifted. The winds sharped, swirling around them with a ferocity that sent shivers down Ruth's spine. Fear bubbled back to the surface, tinged with the unshakable instinct to protect her child. "Claire!" she shouted, scanning the crowd for her daughter. "Right here, Mom," Claire called back, standing close to a few other children, holding their hands. Relief washed over Ruth. Her daughter's presence felt like an anchor in the chaos. Then amongst the chaos, An unexpected call rang out, a woman sobbing softly to the side. Ruth followed the sound, finding the young girl from earlier, now alone, overwhelmed by the storm's sudden ferocity. Without a second thought, Ruth moved towards her, kneeling down to meet her at eye level. "Hey there," she said gently. "What's wrong?" The girl looked up, tears mingling with raindrops. "I don't like storms," she whispered, fear etched in her features. It was a simple admission, but in that moment it felt monumental. Ruth's heart ached. "I know it feels scary right now, but look around. We're all together and we're going to be okay. You're not alone in this." The girl nodded slowly, wiping her eyes on her sleeve. Encouraged, Ruth extended her hand, inviting the girl to join her. As their fingers clasped, Ruth felt a surge of warmth in the pit of her stomach. Together with Claire's friends falling in step around them, they formed a small circle, a shield against the storm. With each clap of thunder, Ruth squeezed the girl's hand tighter. "We're strong," she whispered, determination lacing her words. "Remember, the storm makes us who we are. It's okay to be afraid, but we're braver together." Just then, a blinding light filled the pavilion. It was the loudest thunder yet, trembling through Ruth's bones. She closed her eyes as the world around her rattled, a pulse of fear sharp and biting. Would their unity hold under such pressure? Could they find strength in vulnerability, rising from the rain as one? The weight of uncertainty loomed heavier than the rain. But amongst them, that fragile connection sparked a flicker of hope. Would they dig deep enough to discover the courage that lay beneath the surface? In the roaring storm, every soul craved shelter, and Ruth knew the true storm was only beginning. What would it take to unify them beyond this weather? Would they dare to face the thunder within? The storm raged on, but inside the pavilion, something remarkable was happening. Ruth felt the warmth of unity wrapping around them, strong enough to withstand even the harshest downpour. As thunder cracked again, she opened her eyes, looking at the circle they had formed. Claire stood beside her, squeezing the hands of friends who smiled bravely into the storm. "It's okay to be scared, but together we're stronger," Ruth called out to the children, her voice unwavering despite the chaos surrounding them. "Can we show this storm what we're made of?" Little heads nodded, eyes shining with determination. Suddenly, Harry led a raucous cheer from beyond their circle. "We're all in this together. Let us lift each other up." The sound of clapping and laughter erupted again, drowning out the angry claps of thunder. Hearts once heavy with uncertainty now beat with a rhythm of hope as the raindrops danced against the food laid out on the tables. Claire caught Ruth's gaze and grinned. "Mom, we were always a community, but now we're even more than that. This storm can't take that away." Ruth felt everything within her shift. Fear transformed into purpose. "You're right, Claire. This diner, it's been about so much more than just food. It's been about love and togetherness." She turned back to the crowd of familiar faces, spirits rising with each shared laugh. "Let us embrace the storm together. We can face anything." Seconds turned into moments as encouragement spread like wildfire, filling the air with purpose. No longer were they just individuals caught in a downpour. They were one resilient community, each heart fueled by memories and love for one another. A voice piped up from the back of the crowd. It was the young girl, now emboldened, her eyes shining bright. "Can we dance? Like Harry?" Laughter bubbled through the crowd, and Ruth felt a spark ignite within her. "Let us dance," she shouted, leading the charge as the music played in their hearts, laughter mingling with the rain. They began to sway and jiggle, the joy infectious. One by one, others joined in until the pavilion became a sanctuary of light, warmth and connection. Moments later, the rain softened, turning into a gentle mist. It felt like a cleansing, washing away not just the storm but the doubts that had clouded Ruth's mind. Gazing around, she saw friends and strangers alike, united under one roof. She caught a glimpse of Martha, who moved closer, a faint smile breaking through her skeptical exterior. This is what you were talking about, I senti it?" The spirit of community, she acknowledged, her voice filled with awe. Ruth beamed. "Yes, we're more than just a diner. We are each other's family. No storm can come between us." One of the older gentlemen with bright eyes added, "We need to remember this feeling. Let us take it with us when we rebuild that spark of hope." The others chimed in, an agreement stirring excitement within the crowd. Ruth felt a rush of gratitude wash over her. Her heart had never felt so full. As the clouds began to part, letting sunlight filter back into the park, Ruth knew they had not only faced the storm but emerged triumphant together, with renewed purpose and an unbreakable bond. That night, as the last guests left, Claire gathered with her mother near the picnic tables. "We did it, Mom. We really did." Her bright eyes sparkled. "We can rebuild the diner together, all with the love we have right here." "Yes, yes. And we can hold the annual potluck here at the park every year from now on," Ruth suggested, feeling the future stretch before them like a vibrant canvas. Claire grinned ear to ear. "And we can make it even bigger. More folks will come next time. We'll turn this into a tradition. Together we will rise from these ashes," Ruth echoed, her voice stronger than ever. As the sun dipped low, casting a beautiful glow across the park, Ruth felt the spark of hope ignite into a flame. Everything they had worked for, together it would shine strong and unstoppable. They were moving forward, hand in hand, mother and daughter, supported by every single soul in their community, ready to face whatever came next. Now Ruth knew that no matter how dark the night appeared, light awaited just around the corner, kindled by love, resilience, and the spirit of togetherness. And with that certainty cradled in her heart, Ruth declared, "Let us take that first step towards rebuilding not just the diner but everything we hold dear." As they dropped the last of the pinwheel decorations into the bin, Ruth turned to the crowd, their spirits still buoyed by laughter and joy. "Thank you, everyone. Thank you for showing up. Remember tonight, let us dig deep, work hard, and create something beautiful, because that's what love does." Tears of joy slipped from Ruth's eyes as the crowd cheered, the heartbeat of their community a melody of hope ringing into the night. The future mirrored the fireflies that began twinkling around them, bright, full of promise and alive with potential. And as they ventured forth side by side, the shadows that once loomed over them faded into the warmth of a beautiful new beginning. Don't wait not even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel to witness the magic of transformation unfold. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this incredible story. Comment your thoughts, feelings, and reactions about this emotional journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this uplifting transformation. You need to show your support and spread the love. Let's continue to lift each other up together.